Berm, I just didn't want to believe it. You told me last week. I said, I'm pretty sure Northwestern's going to have to host this game in Soldier Field. Why would they want to not? They could take all that money. They can host Ohio State fans. They can make a ton of money. They don't have to play at a practice field. And then Soldier Field, out the window. Wrigley Field is in. So this is, I guess, a travel Tuesday edition of the Podcast Daily. He's Berm. I'm Austin Ward. I just didn't think it could actually happen. Yeah, Ohio State playing on a baseball field. This is so dumb.
I'm actually part excited for it because it is obviously such an aberration and so abnormal for Ohio State to have that opportunity. I'm trying it's 2024, it's year of positivity, so I'm obviously not going to complain about the fact that there's probably only going to be one end zone that they're allowed to play into because that's what they've done there before.
Teams on the same sideline.
Teams on the same sideline going towards the same end zone, and the only way the other end zone gets used is if it's an interception or something like that on the way back. So it's really stupid, and I don't know exactly how big Wrigley is. I mean, what does it hold, 50, 60 probably?
I don't think it holds 60. It's a baseball stadium.
It's a baseball stadium. So what does it hold? 25 at most? I mean, it's bad. Are they going to use the rooftops across the street in the middle of November? Because that's the other. This is November in Chicago. The last time we went to Northwestern in November, it was a November 7 game. This is actually, I think, a November 16. So it's actually...
We almost got blown all the way back to Ohio.
Yeah, nearly got murdered by wind. Vicious, vociferous wind. I mean, logistically, this is a nightmare for Ohio State fans, for the Ohio State team. But for television, I guess it's going to be just, neat.
I just am not. I don't even think that would necessarily be true for this case. Like putting them at Soldier Field and actually having, a vocal crowd. I can understand like Northwestern doesn't want to be overrun by Ohio State fans, but guess what? That was going to happen no matter what. Yeah. Like I would think. In terms of camera setup, that it would be a lot easier for Fox, CBS, NBC to use an existing football stadium, which is where they're used to shooting football. So I just can't – I would have felt like at some point the Big Ten and the television partners Ohio State may not have enough say, although if they are concerned about the safety of playing at a baseball stadium, they may have been able to hold up their hand and say, well, hold on, wait a minute. That can't work. I just don't understand how this was the conclusion that they made. There are other options, even if it wasn't Soldier Field. Playing, I know they've done this with Illinois and Northwestern, but also who cares?
Yeah.
This is one of the most important teams in college football. And the part that really trips me up is Northwestern being like, you know what? We'd rather not have the gate of going to play this game at Soldier Field. We're good here. We're going to move it out of our practice facility, which is where they're going to play other home games, which is also just like mind-blowing for a Big Ten football team. But this, maybe I'm not trying to make this about my frustration, which is I think that it's incredibly stupid. Yeah. I just don't. I don't know how all the other parties involved look at this like, oh, that's fine.
Why not just say we're going to play this game at Ohio State and give Northwestern, a bigger slice of the pie than they would get if they play? Like, there are a number of things you could do here. It's Northwestern, okay? We don't have to pretend as though it's a program that it has this storied football tradition that, we have to have our home games. Like, no, you don't. No one goes to them. So who cares? We've been there. It's always more Ohio State fans than just Northwestern fans. Have it in Indianapolis. Do anything other than having Ohio State playing, again, in a place where players are going to be risking their health just running a kickoff return for a touchdown. Like, it does not make sense. But this is the new world, and they have, 3 years of this? So I feel like we're going to see more weirdness, but it's when you're talking about Ohio State, one of the biggest brands in the sport, it just seems like a really poor decision.
Yeah, my feeling on covering it is that I think it's going to be pretty dumb. I want to make that clear. I'm biased from that perspective, and I think it's a horrible, horrible mistake. I've heard from a number of other Ohio State fans, like some feel it's unique, it's awesome, like they've never done this before. Put them in a baseball stadium, like that'll be a cool opportunity. I've never been to Wrigley Field. And that's fine. I certainly understand that.
They've never played on an aircraft carrier either.
Well, and how did that work out when the basketball team tried to?
Not great.
Didn't work out.
This thing called fog and humidity.
So football games, I guess I would say, are meant to be played in football stadiums. And you can do it in other places, but you shouldn't. And I think there are more people than not. They're like, whoa, if they're going to have to do it in Chicago, you have a football stadium right there. I know that there can be logistics and turnover for Bears games and all the rest of that are complicating factors, but man, it just seems like there's nothing redeeming about this for me.
Yeah, I can get it. I mean, I like the idea of it from a photographer standpoint.
You only have to set up in one spot.
Right, it's going to be cool, aesthetics, but it doesn't make a lot of sense. And it makes me wonder, where would this rank on like the dumbest ideas in college football?
Like all of college football?
Yeah, like when it comes to
like transfer portal versus playing at Wrigley Field.
Yeah, like I mean, I think that if we really went down a list of like all of the poor decisions that college football makes, and let's just narrow it down to like the last couple of years of college football's poor decisions, like where would this rank? Probably not that high, because it's just one game as opposed to fundamentally ruining the sport that people grew up loving and now can't stand for a number of reasons. But I think it's fine if you're playing Northwestern in Illinois at Wrigley Field. It's fine if you're playing Northwestern in Minnesota at Wrigley Field. It just doesn't make sense for Ohio State.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point. It's not fundamentally changing the sport, although there is, I think, a risk at play in terms of health. Like every time they've played a game there's something that happens that goes sideways. Like, well, maybe that's why they don't do this, because you're running into a brick wall. Yeah, I don't know why they still have the IV up for baseball games there, but that's neither here nor there.
What if we can combine the football playing in the baseball stadium with the 70-mile-an-hour winds that we had 2 years ago?
I'd rather not. That would be my preference. I think if we could avoid that, that'd be great. That was one of the worst experiences of watching college football that I've had. So maybe there's just no solution. Ohio State versus Northwestern is going to be ugly in almost any circumstance. Even when the weather was fine, was that 2019? And Ohio State went up there.
Beautiful night.
And we were measuring the grass. But why? What is it about Northwestern? It just has to be so bizarre. I don't know. I was trying to think of like other experiences that you and I have had covering Ohio State, or unique experiences, if we don't want to call them outright bad. And it's like half of the top 10 seems like it includes Northwestern.
Well, because there's not much else to remember about those trips, because traditionally there is no real...
Well, I can remember more because the bars weren't open after the game in 2019.
On a Friday night at 10:30 in Evanston. No wonder all those people are so miserable. I don't know. I think that we are obviously going to look at it and say, well, the Ohio State perspective is this is stupid. I'm trying to envision it from the national perspective of the nostalgia of Wrigley Field and all that. But, like, Penn State's not going to Yankee Stadium to play Rutgers. You know what I mean? Like, I just think that it's poor planning, but Northwestern is trying to pull on their big boy pants and build a facility that people want to go to. And this is, unfortunately, the ramification. I think Ohio State should say, take us off the schedule this year, and we'll just play someone else.
Yeah, like,
would college football really suffer if Northwestern said, we're going to take 2 years off and let's get our stadium together and then we'll play?
I actually advocated for that a year ago when they had the coaching turmoil. I was like, you know what? And I was amazed. Credit to
David Braun did a great job.
Credit to David Braun and what the Wildcats did, bouncing back from the summer firing of Pat Fitzgerald and that whole situation. They were a tough out and a dangerous football team, and limited football team, but competitive. Dangerous is too strong of a word for a team with no offense. But credit to them for doing that. And they've always done or try to do more with less. And that's fine. But this is a situation where they're making it harder on themselves. They're trying to put in temporary seating around their practice facility to get through all these other games. Like, you don't have to do that.
Yeah. But I guess they do. I mean, they're in the Big Ten. They're a important, esteemed member of the Big Ten.
Sure.
What would the equivalent be at Ohio State if this? I mean, would it be playing at Bill Davis Stadium? I mean, I just don't understand how this was.
Yeah, I mean, it would be at Huntington Park, like trying to squeeze a football game into a minor league baseball stadium. If they wouldn't, there was no world where Ohio State would do that when they couldn't even play their spring game in the Horseshoe. They took it to an NFL venue and they went down to Cincinnati.
Beautiful day that was. I was there. Wonderful, wonderful weather.
Yeah. I mean, I thought they were going to continue doing that more often, to be honest with you. Like,
they should take it
on
the
the
state.
tour. But then people miss out on the opportunity to be in the horseshoe, which I get.
So, in your ideal world, where would Ohio State, like, if the horseshoe is unavailable, would the Buckeyes do that? Would they alternate between Cincinnati and Cleveland for home games for seasons, or how do you think that they would handle it?
I think they would have to. I mean, there are other places that they could play in Columbus. You have historic Crew Stadium, which has the size needed. You have lower.com field, which you could play football games in there, but those are limited to, I think, 23,000 for lower.com and certainly less than that. There was temporary seating that they put into historic Crew Stadium that could get it up there when they had U.S. games, but Ohio State,
they could get like 100?
They could never get 100,000 people. They could get like 23 to 25,000 people. That's the max, and that's the thing that is shocking to me about Northwestern's decision, as they're turning down revenue. You know that if Ohio State played Northwestern at Soldier Field, I don't know if they would sell out 70,000. But I bet
50.
I bet they'd get 50.
How many do you think showed up for the Ohio State Northwestern game 2 years ago? Because that was pretty empty. Obviously, the weather was.
How many people showed up for that game? 24,000 maybe.
I mean, it was bad. But the 2019 game, it was pretty well packed from Ohio State fans.
Well, the one in your point is 2 years ago that was still all Ohio State fans.
Yeah. So I mean, I just don't know that it matters for them. But I'm thinking about like in an Ohio State world where the horseshoe needs to be completely renovated because whatever reason, where would they play?
I think they would probably take your idea of alternating between Cleveland and Cincinnati, whichever one is more available, has cleaner logistics if there's not a Sunday Bengals or Browns game. I don't believe they would take the convenience of playing at one of the available opportunities in Columbus, of which like those are decent ones to have. Northwestern has those too, by the way. In Chicago, there's more than enough opportunity around that area.
Is there another soccer stadium there?
Yeah, but so Chicago Fire played in Soldier Field because their stadium sucks. They're trying to move closer to downtown. It's a dump that's out by Midway Airport. Again, there are other options aside from just throwing up your hands and saying, let's play at a baseball stadium. But I'm pretty sure, and I did think that Ohio State was going to do this more with their spring games, that you go play in Cleveland, you go play in Cincinnati, take it around the state. If they're bulldozing the horseshoe to build a dome, that's what they're going to do.
What a great idea.
I don't mean to start up those comments in there.
Where does Northwestern and this idea rank for you on like the least desirable outcomes of an Ohio State home game or an Ohio State game period?
I think it's the worst.
I mean, we're obviously struggling for off-season content here, but
I do. I think that this is a.
Did you read anything about this decision? Because I didn't. I was just like, as soon as I saw it, I was just like annoyed. So I didn't. What was the justification? Did you see any?
No. I mean, everybody. I was under the impression that this was going to be in Soldier Field. I'm like, oh, well, that makes sense because it's their biggest, most lucrative home game. It must be something to do with the Bears and the cost of using that stadium. But that's what the money's for.
Aren't the Bears building a new stadium too?
Yes.
Couldn't they have used that money to build a new stadium?
I don't know. I think that to me, I don't mean to just continually pile on Northwestern here, but it makes me think that they're not serious about competing at the same level as the other 17. And I say that I don't lump Northwestern into their own category. I feel like Maryland's locker room situation is the same deal. I feel like what has to be dealt with getting into and out of Rutgers is the same situation. And I wonder when we talk about the super leagues.
I like Rutgers.
I know you do, but that's stuff your face. That's not like.
I mean, I think the stadium's cute. It's a quaint little stadium. It's not hard to get to. It's not hard to get out of. And now it's certainly not exactly the most exciting place in the world. There's not a lot going on right there, but I don't mind Rutgers.
when these conversations are ongoing about super leagues and taking the haves and the have-nots and who's going to actually support college football at the level that it needs to be done to actually win championships and earn slices of college football playoff money, like those are the ones that I'm like, well, that doesn't even exist across all 18 teams that are in the Big Ten. Like some of this classification and stratification has to occur even with the teams that aren't spending the amount of money that was the whole point of the Fox, CBS, and NBC broadcast deals to put it in. Now, Northwestern is building a stadium. Kudos to that. Yeah. But you still have to make consistently grown-up decisions with your money, and I'm not convinced that everyone in the league is doing that. That's what annoys me.
Do you think it's a guarantee that Northwestern, when the NCAA inevitably breaks off and we have the 4 16-team super divisions or however this is going to work, the 64-team league and then the other 64, are we 100% sure Northwestern's in the top 64? Because
I don't know why they would be.
I mean, I think that those are, obviously they're building the new place in order to try to get to that level. But until then, I don't know that it's a program that you can even look at and say, well, they definitely belong in that conversation. And it's decisions like this one that put you in that, mindset, because this wouldn't happen to any other school in the Big Ten. If Indiana had to redo Memorial Stadium, the games would just be in Indianapolis.
And that's true. All right, so let's take the teams that I talked about. If this happened to Maryland,
right,
they would be going to Baltimore
right,
or playing in the Commander Stadium. Either one, maybe both. Same thing for Rutgers. If they had to, they would have plenty of other options. I don't think they would want to do MetLife Stadium.
Right, but they wouldn't be going to play it at New Shea or whatever the hell stadium the Mets play in.
Yeah, they definitely would not. So I give Northwestern credit for upgrading.
Do you think
practice
this
facility.
is a competitive? They're trying. We talked about it a lot with Kevin Wilson on the field at Northwestern 2 years ago, which is we get there and it's like, what is Ohio State doing playing here? Why? And then the weather being what it was turned that game into a weird, very strange anomaly type of game with a 21-7 win or whatever. What they left with, obviously not until the middle of the fourth quarter when they put it away. But is this Northwestern going, well, the best chance we have of Ohio State sleepwalking into something is in this setting?
We've seen them try that before.
Because they do it on purpose. I mean, we know that was their goal. I mean, Kevin Wilson said that was his goal when he was at Northwestern.
They didn't have any of the music on beforehand. Forget about the weather. Everything building up. Northwestern didn't come into the stadium and warm up. They were across the street doing their weird calisthenics. I don't know. I wouldn't want to assign that motivation to it, but I can tell you for sure that Ohio State's going to be uncomfortable in it. Because everyone is. Yeah. Same sideline, the logistics, that's not the way the football is built to be played.
No.
Running in your head into the end zone?
It's not meant to be played in a baseball stadium.
Yeah.
That's ultimately the point, I guess.
I don't know. And if Ohio State and Northwestern are not going to play the same sport, which I would argue, and they've had good games. They played in Indianapolis in the Big Ten Championship game. Before Pat Fitzgerald lost his mind, he had built a rugged, competitive team. He had been in a steady decline.
I believe Pat Fitzgerald and Ryan Day are very close friends, by the way.
Are they?
Yeah.
Well, I think that there was some professional courtesy extended during the COVID cycle.
Yeah.
But
Pat Fitzgerald was in Columbus at the Under Armour camp at the end of April because his son came to participate in the camp, and him and Ryan Day were just sitting there the whole time.
Well, few people have been in that boat. They had something to bond over, being a big-time college football coach, but Pat Fitzgerald is not that, and he probably never will be again.
I bet Pat Fitzgerald would be an analyst at Ohio State if he wasn't trying to win his lawsuit. That's what I bet.
I don't believe that he would be allowed to be hired by Ohio State's administration. Do you remember what he got fired for?
Once he wins his lawsuit, and
once he wins it.
Oh, he's going to win that lawsuit.
Wow. Okay.
He's going to win that lawsuit.
Interesting.
Yeah.
All right.
We know, folks. We know. It's Tuesday. We're talking about the things that are happening around Ohio State football. And this is one of the things that's happening around Ohio State football. And it shouldn't be. That's the whole point.
I know. I say it a lot on Tuesdays. I'm sorry.
But we really appreciate you watching.
If you did.
If you did. And if you didn't, then we're not sorry at all. But if you did watch, tomorrow will be better. You need to give us some suggestions for content. for off-season discussions you'd like to see us have. There's things we could talk about. We could start ranking position groups.
I didn't want to do more ranking.
No, not the ranking, but like the Mount Rushmores. You know, we could go position by position and do Mount Rushmores of Ohio State sport.
Well, people did ask, why is Ohio State playing at Wrigley Field? And the truth is, I don't really know the answer. And I just am more annoyed by the fact that it exists at all. And we didn't talk about it last week because I was, again, hoping that couldn't be possible.
It was just a fever dream?
Yeah.
No, it wasn't. Not a fever dream at all.
It's unfortunate. I went and scouted Soldier Field on Saturday night just to be sure. It's like, it would definitely be a great place for an Ohio State game.
Have you been to Wrigley more than once?
Yes.
I've only been there once. And I liked it, but I liked it for baseball.
Yeah. You know, they really should play more baseball games there.
Yeah. I don't think so. They should probably play less. To be honest, they should probably only play 51 a year instead of 81 a year. Home games.
But that's actually a place that's enjoyable to watch a baseball game. I don't believe that I'm going to enjoy covering a football game, but that's now what I'm thinking about.
I'm going to because I enjoy doing anything I get to do in this job because I love my job and I love sports and I love football and I love everyone out there for being supportive of us.
Well said. He's Berm. I'm Austin. This has been the Podcast Daily for Tuesday, and I'm sorry, or thank you, or you're welcome, whatever. We'll see you tomorrow.